Good afternoon, everybody. While we're waiting for people to attend, I just want to ask you guys a quick question. This is not part of the webinar. I'm just curious, how many of you have never processed 1099s through MIP? If you could either raise your hand or let me know in the QA section. If you've never processed 1099s through MIP, that would be very helpful. Oh, very nice. Okay, cool. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much.
All right,
It's
we'll go ahead
all
and get
yours.
started.
Yeah.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for today's MIP 1099 webinar. My name is Kristen Fredericks. I'm the marketing specialist here at JMT, and we're very excited to have JMT's Dougie Stanton lead us in the webinar today. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before I turn it over. If you have any questions during the webinar, please go ahead and submit them into the Q&A section as you think of them. We will save all the questions until the end, but please do not hesitate to submit them as they come. Participants in today's webinar are eligible to receive 1 CPE credit at the completion of the webinar. At various points throughout the webinar, you'll be prompted to answer a polling question. You must answer at least 3 of these polling questions to be eligible to receive the CPE credit. In addition to the polling questions, you must also complete the survey that will pop up at the completion of the webinar. Please take the time to fill this out as it will be used to better our webinars in the future. So if you stayed for the duration of the webinar, answered at least 3 of the polling questions, and complete the survey at the end, you will receive your certificate of completion, the webinar recording, and slides in your email. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Dougie, to get us started.
Thank you very much, Kristen. And thank you all for letting me know that the vast majority of you have never processed 1099s and MIP. I was going to say MIP and 1099s. For those of you, let's just dive in. If I can get my slideshow to work. So I want to cover various points, and I'm going to go through the PowerPoint and also show you within MIP what are some of the whole process, from what are the requirements of the setup, what version you need to be on, how you can verify data, and how do you get to the Atrix wizard. So the number one requirement for it before you get started is you have to be on MIP version 2023.2.2 or later. I believe 0.2.2 is the latest version. And the reason for that is it has all the up-to-date forms that you'll need for 1099s. And this isn't in the PowerPoint, but my assumption is you have security rights to do this processing. And so let me go through the security rights as well. So I'm going to switch over to MIP. So in MIP, if you go up to organization, well, first of all, security, set up organization menus, and you can do it by user. I'm going to pick my user. I'm going to pick the NPS user. You're going to see this little menu. You're going to expand the menu. You're going to go to activities, and then you're going to expand accounts payable. And you want to make sure that produce vendor 1099s has all of the permissions selected. And you don't have to follow the line across. All you have to do is make sure that all these check mark boxes that are not grayed out have check marks in them. Okay, so that's how you can make sure you have security rights to do so. Back to the PowerPoint. Oops, sorry. Here we go. The other thing that you need to make sure of is that your tax forms need to be updated. So, and I'm going to show you how you can access this. So you need to go to either the activities drop-down menu and select accounts payable, and then select process 1099s. And I have the path on the next slide. Or I'll show you the different ways to get to it from the actual accounts payable menu as well. This forms update button right here, mine is grayed out. This is a screenshot from my MIP. That means my forms have already been updated. If they are ever not grayed out, you have to update the forms. Okay, so that is some basic, basic information before you get started. But before we do that, we need to make sure that our data is correct. And so how do you check to make sure that the data is correct? Well, there's a couple of reports that you can run, and MIP or Community Brands is going to tell you a couple of like the journal, the vendor information report and the cash journal report, etc. But if you run the cash journal report, that'll give you all the information you need on one report. And so let me show you what I mean. If you go to the reports drop-down menu and select journals and select cash journals, you can verify the amounts paid to your vendors and see all of the appropriate information. And so, for example, I have ABC office supply twice here. And what that means is, and I ran this in summary view, and I'm going to run the report for you as well. What that means is I have payments that were made to ABC office supplies where there was no 1099 information in there. And I have payments that were linked to the NEC box 1 form. And so one of the things I would want to check out then is the ones that were not applied to a 1099 form. Were those reimbursements, like were they really not? Should they not be part of 1099s, or was it just a data entry error? And so if it should have been a part of 1099 information, I'm going to show you how you can do adjustments as well. So let me go back to MIP, because this really is an MIP training sessions. If I go back to MIP, if I go to reports and then journals, and then cash journal. And I already did one, the 1099 report summarized, but if you start with the bracket reports, since you guys have never run Atrix 1099s, I don't know how much of the reporting you know or you don't know. I'm going to select summary this year. Any report that has a bracket around it is an MIP created report. And as soon as you make a change to it, you're going to have to fill in the name of the report. So I'm going to change the date from 1/1/24 to 1/1/2023 to 12/31/2023. Do you notice how the name field blanked out? So now it becomes your report. So I'm going to say webinar example. Then you want to go to the content tab. I don't want to do a page break by GL code. So I'm going to remove that so that there's nothing in the top corner. The document number would be the invoice number. The ID would be the vendor ID. But let's say I really want the name. Where is the name field on the left-hand column? Vendor name, maybe this pulls it all together. Or the title field, that's the GL information. I guess that is the vendor. It'll give me the name, that's fine. I don't want to show totals because that gives me subtotals in, and I just want a list, right? I can determine column widths. I can see everything. And I'm going to filter the report by whether it is transaction source equals AP. You know what? I drew a blank. I pulled the wrong report. I apologize. Go away. I know, let me move this again. Never stop in midstream. 1099. This is the one I ran. Nope, I don't want to save changes. I just called it test. But here's what I did is I included the name field, the vendor tax ID number, the 1099 type in box, the disbursement, and the adjustment. And on the filter, the source equals vendor, because we only want to pull vendor records. This journal report pulls from all journals. So we only want to pull those journal entries that include vendors. And we also want to filter by if the vendor has issue 1099 turned on, come on mouse, we want to filter based on that. So if I run this report, mine's going to be really short. Yours won't be short. Here's the information that you see. And I removed that subtotals check mark from the content tab so that I can see grand totals. So here's what I was saying is if I want to make an adjustment, 828.62, if I see that, oh, you know what? ABC office applied, this dollar amount should really be part of the 1099, then I need to go back to the vendor record. I'm going to go to accounts payable. I'm going to go to vendors under maintenance. I'm going to double click ABC. And I'm going to go to the 1099 information tab. Here, I'm going to type in 2023 because that's the tax year that it'll apply. I'm going to say this is NEC because back in 2006, that was still miscellaneous. And this is going to be NEC01. So just by me putting in the type, which is really the form, it'll automatically give me just the box choices available for NEC. And I want to add 828.62. Okay. And so now I'm going to save it. So now if I go back to rerun this report, and I'm always going to close my tabs because if you leave too many tabs open, that can cause issues with other users. Oh, sorry, hit the wrong thing. I meant to run the screen and not the printer setup. Do you see how ABC, why does it still show that? Interesting. Let me exit out and let me close. Sorry. Okay. Let's do it again, see if it refreshed. Because what it should do is interesting. Well, we're going to see if it refreshed on the form. It should have refreshed right here unless it didn't keep it on the vendor records. This is what you have to do to test it out, right? You want to make sure that it gets included on the report. Oh, you know what? I did do 2023. Let's do ABC. And let's do 1099. Yep, I have 2023 NEC01 828.62. Interesting. Okay, when we run through the wizard, let's double check it there as well. See, things don't always run perfectly through webinars, but that's the report that you want to run to verify your data. Okay, so let's go on with the webinar. Okay, so that's the report. And this is what I just did with the adjustments. It'll tell you on the PowerPoint to go to the 1099 information on the vendor record and type it in and then save it, which it obviously didn't do. Next, we're going to go to the Atrix wizard. And so this will tell you to go to activities, accounts payable, produce vendor 1099s. We're going to do all this within MIP. You're going to select form type new. You're going to select the 2023 form. You're going to make the appropriate form, whether it's NEC or miscellaneous. Some of you may have some vendors for either one, right? You're going to make sure that the year is 2023, and then you can filter the appropriate filter below. And I want to, this is the slideshow is now going to go through the wizard. And I want to actually go through the wizard with you guys in MIP. So I can show you within the product what you need to do. And by the side note is if you all are using the cloud-based Avila MIP or Community Brands MIP, this Atrix has to be done in Classic. They have not moved the 1099 processing out of Classic into the cloud yet. So you have to do it in Classic. So let me go back to MIP. So for this, we're going to go to either activity. Well, let me show you here first. If you're on the accounting accounts payable screen, if you click on vendor 1099s, that'll take you to the 1099 processing screen. I'm going to close out of this. I'm going to cancel out of this, and I'll show you the other way to get to it. This slide will tell you to go to activities, accounts payable, and produce vendor 1099s. It's the very same screen. It's just accessing it in two different ways. Then we're going to go to form type of new. You want to pick a new one. You're going to go to the appropriate NEC form, which there's only one. And we're going to pick 2023. Notice my form updates button is grayed out. So that has already been updated. Now, in this instance, I don't need to filter. I don't need to filter by fund. I don't need to filter by any specific grant or whatever the case may be. You may need to filter. So for example, if you are tracking data with different funds or different entities and you use the fund code to track that, and there's different FEIN numbers that need to go on the 1099 from your organization, then you will need to filter by fund. And when you filter by fund, if there's a different tax ID involved, you will need to go to organization information. And let's go to, here's your tax ID. You only do this if you are dealing with different tax IDs, because you need to generate more than one 1099 form that has a different tax ID. So you would filter the appropriate fund code or whatever you may name it, and then populate the correct FEIN number here. Make sure the correct address is listed here. The other thing you need to make sure under organization information is under electronic filing. This is new this year. You have to fill in the contact name and you have to fill in the contact email address. This is a new requirement this year by the IRS, and you have to fill it in, okay? If you don't fill it in on this screen, there will be a screen in the wizard that you need to fill in. So, but for this example, I'm not going to filter. I'm going to click OK. And it's going to go through and compile all of your 1099 information. And it's thinking, where did it go? Oh, it went to a different screen. Hang on a second, I got to bring it over. So it'll bring up this next little screen, and on your machine, it may hide behind MIP. If you have multiple monitors, it may show up on a different monitor like mine did. But this is the very next screen. On this screen, and I have all this information in the PowerPoint. On this screen, you can say, do you want to test drive with the first 25 of your recipients? Do you want to test drive with all of your recipients? And I'm going to say, no, thanks, just start processing. Okay. So if you click next, this allows you to verify your tax ID. This is your organization's tax ID. So you definitely want to verify that. And then click next. And then you want to verify this information. And all this is saying is if you are using multiple 1099 data files, then you click that. Most of the time, it's just going to be no, you're going to use a single data file, okay? Because you have one database. You may be tracking different information out of different databases, but you have one database. So this is what you're going to want to use. Then I'm going to go next. Here, this is the information that is will pull on your 1099 form. And notice, even though I put the name up there, my contact name, I have to put it here too. There's something different with mine. I can put a title. I'm going to say webinar presenter and my email address. Because if I don't fill it in, well, let me leave it blank so you can see what happens. If I click next, do you see this? It tells me that it's a required field. And so before I can proceed, I have to fill in an email address. All right, let's go next. On this next screen, you're being asked, what type of filer are you? And 99.9% of the time, it's going to be, I am filing for my company or my employer. Because you're a staff member of your company or your organization, I should say. And so you're going to want to select, I'm filing for my company or employer. So let's go next. If you have state tax that has been taken out, that should list here. One caveat is if you also have the payroll module, then you may see some payroll tax, state taxes in here. I mean, the states where payroll state tax has been withheld, you can just ignore those. Those will only print on W-2 information, not 1099 information. So the system does know the difference. It just may also display them here. So next is local tax. If you have local tax set up, and that pertains to payroll. I have the payroll module turned on in my MIP, and that's why I have this information. So you may not even see this screen. Okay, on this one is, do you have any recipients who elected to only receive 1099 forms electronically? If some of your vendors said, send me the 1099s electronically, and the vendor record is set up that way, be sure to check mark yes. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it at no. Okay, let's go next. And it's thinking. What it's doing now is it's getting ready for all the data verification within. Hang on, I need to pull this over again. Within the wizard. And each one of these screens allows you to verify data again. And so let's go through these screens on these. So this is called the 1099 Preparer Grid. That's the official name. And my mouse decided to go AWOL. Here we go. Come on, mouse. Okay. So on this, at the top, it'll tell you what portion of the data you're looking at. So it's not going to make you look at all the data all at once. So this one is verify recipient taxpayer identification number. And so this will give you the ID numbers. And notice the last name, first name, middle name is not showing. So, but it's also highlighting the column in blue for the data it's verifying here. Now notice here, there's nothing here. And so if I were to go next, it'll tell me that there's an error. I left it on purpose, an error. So because it's pulling the taxpayer ID number from the vendor record. So I'm going to click on go back and correct, and I'm going to say, I'm just going to put in a pretend social security number. You would want to put the correct social security number. Here we go. And once I have, oops, let's go. It won't even let me go next. There we go, because I haven't done next. It put it in there. I knew it was a social security number because this checkmark flag says it's only checked if it's an FEIN number. So if it's only a company or a business. Here's the thing though, if I just correct it here, it will not update the vendor record. So you're gonna wanna go back to the vendor record and update the name, I mean, the tax ID there. And you're like, well, what's the vendor record? What's the name of the vendor? I don't know why my mouse is having a hard time staying on, but it is. And so you can scroll all the way over. And we don't even have names here. I mean, that are visible here. Oh, here it is. So I would have to look up transportation services and then add the tax ID number here. Because if you don't add it to the vendor record, every time you go in this grid, let's say you do this process several times just to test, and then you do it for real. Every single time you're going to have to add it here if you don't update the vendor record. I can't stress that enough. So now I'm going to go next. Next is we're going to check if this FEIN number is selected. And if the 1099, sorry, come here, mouse. And we already verified that, right? So if it's not checked and it should have been, then again, we need to update the vendor record. I'm going to go next. Here's the thing. If the FEI number is not checked, Intact assumes it's an individual person. If it's an individual person, then we need last name and first name. Notice how this threw an error. And so I need to go back and correct. And again, let's say the last name is Smith. We'll say Terry, and we'll say Jones, and we'll say Tim. We'll stay with T's. And again, this would have to be valid data, and you again would need to update the vendor records for it to have a permanent change. Let's go next. This then allows you to verify the names. This is all good now. We don't have any more errors, so we can go next. Invalid characters in the names. Okay, got it. Come on, go back. What it's referring to is it automatically fixed it. Originally, it was CPA, comma S. It didn't like that. So I clicked OK, so it automatically fixed the formatting. But again, do you get the trend? Fix this on the permanent vendor record. Let's go next. Now we're going to verify all the income boxes. So we want to make sure. Oh, look, see the total? The total here is correct. When I added the adjustment, just that report didn't show the right thing. Oh, you know what? I bet I had the wrong field. This is the correct total when I added that adjustment to my ABC office supply. So it did correct this correctly. I need to go back to the report and make sure I pulled the correct adjustment field. So these all look good. And you could compare those next to your report if you wanted to, and make sure it all matches. With 1099 amounts, I would always want to double verify. We want to verify that the filing state is correct. That would be here. I'm in Texas. MIP is in Texas, so that's why everything is in Texas. You want to make sure that the filing state is correct. And we don't have state income tax in Texas, so we don't have to worry about it. And that's fine. We're going to go next. We're going to verify all the other data, and all is good. And now here we get into Atrix. When you verified all the data on the 1099 prepare grid screens, it's going to give you some of the printing and filing options for Atrix, because Atrix is going to do all the filing. Well, not all of it. We'll do the federal filing for you. And this gives you all the dollar amounts based on the number of recipients you have. It'll do all the calculation here depending on what you select. If you select the complete 1099 e-filing services, and that really is the best way to go because they do everything for you. When you go next, it'll get you to an Atrix sign-in screen where you will have to create an account with Atrix if you don't have one created already. And Atrix does a really, really good job with customer support and making it super straightforward and clean for submitting your filings. So I'm not going to do that because this is a demo environment, right? I'm going to select other options down here. And I'm going to print, let's say I want to print my own recipient 1099 copies because I want to have my own copies in-house. And I want Atrix to do the e-filing for federal 1099s and 1096s. I'm not going to e-file the state 1099s and reconciliation forms because I don't want I want to do that myself so that I don't get charged. If you check mark this, notice it'll track and show you how much you would then have to pay to Atrix. I do want to print my federal 1099s and 96. And I also want to print my own state 1099s and reconciliation forms. Make note of this new electronic filing requirement. And MIP does a good job of popping this up where applicable. It says many states have lowered the electronic filing requirements to align with the new federal requirements of electronic filing if more than 10 returns. So if you have more than 10 returns, you do have to do electronic filing. I don't actually have state filing, so I'm not going to check it. But you would definitely want to. And then again, they have a little, one last blurb about the complete filing. And if you decide to do that, then you would check mark this and have Atrix do it. That's what I was referring to earlier, where you would then log into Atrix. Go next. This also is something new this year. Would you like to buy a PDF archive of your 1099s? So if you wish, like currently, if you print all of your own 1099s out, you're going to have paper copies that potentially could be fraudulently used, right? And so this Atrix is providing a PDF file. That's an archive. It'll be encrypted for $34.95. I'm assuming that's the same flat file, flat size, regardless of how many recipients you have. I'm going to say no, thank you, because I only have 4 and it's a demo environment. So we're going to go next. And this is a review of everything that Atrix is going to do now on this screen. So next, it's going to go through and compile all my files. And it's going to load the report. There's 5 different reports it's going to load. So the very first one, at the very top of the toolbar in yellow, it'll say report 105, recipient 1099 NECs. So, which is nice. This is the recipient form. So you can tell that, notice this is all ABC office supply. The recipient is going to get 4 forms and it's a little bit off center. So you know it's all the same recipient because there's different, the recipient gets to keep a copy. They have to file a copy with the form or whatever. So if you see it all a little bit offset, that knows that, then you know it's the recipient. And we have 4 pages. See, here's ABC. Here's William and Erickson. Here's Terry Smith and Tim Jones. Those are the names I added. They all got put in there. Notice my social security number that I typed in, it put it in there. I'm like, oh, at this point, I can put my 1099 form in there and print out the recipient copy if I wanted to. Next, I'm going to go next step. I'm going to say, no, I don't want to print it now because you literally can do this process more than once. As long as you don't log into Atrix, you can redo it. This one is now the federal 1099 NEC. And this is what you would send to the IRS, I believe. It's been a while since I've done this. Thankfully, I don't have to do it anymore. I'm going to go next step, and each one of them allows you to print it out on the 1099. Oh man. There we go. No, I don't want to print it. And then it's going to go to the federal 1096. It's going to compile that. And it's thinking. It is thinking. And it's still thinking. And so while we're waiting for this one to load, I did want to mention that if you update the forms on your workstation and somebody else then needs to go in and process, they need to update it on their workstations as well. So here's my 1096 form. It's all ready to go. You just need to print it out on the 1096 form paper and you're good to go. I'm going to go next step. I don't know why it's not showing. Here we go. No, I don't want to print it. In real life, you would probably want to print it because you need to send it off. And now it's going to print the 1099 NEC instructions that you would send to the recipient along with their 1099 form. They give you the instructions to send to the recipient. Nope, you would probably want to print it. You don't have to, you can skip past it. And we're waiting for the last report. And we're waiting, here we go. And here is the payer 1099 NEC form. So this is the 1099 form that you send to the recipient that you keep for yourself. This is your record of how much you sent to ABC. And notice this one is perfectly aligned. It's not offset. So you know it's 4 different vendors on this one. We only had 4 vendors, so we only have 1 page of this. Okay. Then I would go next step. Nope, I'm not going to print it because this is just webinar. I want to let this finish so you can see what happens. See, now it's automatically connecting you to the Atrix e-file center so you can electronically file to the IRS on behalf of you, which would be free of charge. I want to get to the login page so you can see what it looks like. In the meantime, and then you would have to fill in your username and password. If you don't have a username or password, you would click on this login and create a username and password and then go from there. Okay. So now I'm going to cancel out. So let's say I only did this as a test, even though I selected live. Let's go for it, right? You can always go back to vendor 1099s by either way, either screen, either through the drop-down menu or here on the accounts payable menu. You can reselect new, you can reselect the NEC form, you can reselect a year and start it all over again. And I want to point one thing out to you when this is done. Where is it? Where'd it go? It's hiding again behind the screen. That's not it. It doesn't, it's hiding for me. It's not opening up. Let me walk through it by the PowerPoint. So what we did is we said, no thanks, start processing. And what I probably should have done is totally logged out of that form and closed the tab and then relog back in. So we went through this screen. And this is, again, any changes you make will have to be re-entered. Here's your tax ID. Here's your multiple forms and the state. Here we go. And this was my bad. I failed to point this out. On this recipient identification number, you can select to mask or truncate the recipient ID. This is just on, it'll just be on the printouts that you keep. Any recipient forms will have the full social security number. Okay, so on the printouts that you keep, if you wish to secure the social security numbers or the FEIN numbers, which is highly recommended, especially if you're filing the paper copies so that they can't be used in a fraudulently way in any way, shape, or form, be sure to select one of these truncates. The truncates, and again, will only truncate the social security numbers on the forms you keep. It will not truncate the numbers on the recipient form at all. Let me go to the next slide. Now I'm walking you through the various screens on the prepare grid that we walked through. And again, you sense a theme here. Any changes made on the prepare grid will not be reflected in MIP because you need to make the change on the vendor record, whether it's an adjustment or whether it's fixing the name or the contact information, stuff like that. You can also sort the data on the grid. So when you have those grids open, if you right click on the column headers, you can sort by value. You can move columns around and things like that. So don't be afraid to try out the right grid click options on the prepare grids. Okay. This is the pricing that Atrix offered. That's the same screen that I showed you. And on this next one, it explains what the complete filing options are and the other options are. And you will get this PowerPoint information along with the link to the recording. And it explains what the different forms are. And now let me answer some questions. So first question is it possible to see which vendors were issued 1099s in a previous year? No, it is not. The only way, well, technically is if they were previously issued 1099s, I'm assuming you have some kind of a record in your files, paper files or whatever, of last year's 1099s, and that's actually what you would have to check. Although, hang on a second, there is a way, I just thought of it. I don't know if I can show you here though. Let's try it. I'm going to cancel out of here so that I can log back in. If you go to activities, accounts payable, produce vendor 1099s. The problem is I don't have, in our demo environment, we haven't filed anything. Yeah. I would want you to check this on your MIP database. If you go to form type history, you should be able to then see which form was previously submitted for filing. Theoretically, you should see form 2022, form 2021, etc., in the appropriate form, whether it was NEC or miscellaneous. I just can't show it to you because I don't have the data to support it in my demo environment. So that would be one way to do it. Let's see, the next question is, my organization, excuse me, recently moved our MIP to the cloud a few months ago. When I look in the classic version in activities, accounts payable, produce 1099s is missing. I have been able to produce 1099s on my account previously. Thoughts on what to do? I would still go back and check your security settings. Make sure, because I'm still, oops, sorry. Let me get back to MIP. I'm going to cancel out of here. I would make sure that your security settings were not mixed up or messed up when the transition happened. They shouldn't have, but it's always good to double check So if you have access to security, go back to security on the menu item, click on set up organization menus, select your user, type user and your username, expand accounting, go down to activities, and under activities, you definitely want to be able to produce vendor 1099s, right? Under transactions, it would also be a good idea to make sure you have rights to everything in accounts payable, because you are pulling from accounts payable transactions. And under maintain, go to accounts payable and make sure you have access to vendors. You should, but make sure if you don't actually see the check marks, sometimes I've seen where you don't see the check mark, but there's a little filled in square. Undo it and redo it, and it sets it up again. For some reason, if you just see a little square, I wonder if I can see it on one of the others. No, I can't. Not in here. I've only seen it with clients. I haven't seen it in my demo environment at all. It doesn't have the check mark. It's just filled in with a color, and it doesn't even all the way fill the square. Uncheck it and recheck it, and that will most likely take care of the issue. If you're still having problems, contact support. That would be support@jmtconsulting.com, and we will be happy to help you out. We'll figure it out with you. Okay. All right. The next question is there somewhere in MIP that provides a description of the different cash journal reports? Very good question. So if we are in, let's go close. Let's go to reports, journals, cash journal. So, and notice these are the different cash journal reports that are available. What the difference is the type of, let me just show the test. Like we wanted to pull everything that was based on the source of vendor. If you want to see what the difference you have, you can either pull based on customer, employee, item, payroll, or vendor. Those are your choices. Okay, and that assumes that's if you're filtering based on source. If you're not filtering based on source, let's see based on type. One way to find out is just use that filter and see what's available on the drop down. Education, health, other. I don't even know where some of these. So I shouldn't admit that on my webinar, but I don't know where some of these come from. And so if you're still stuck, if you go to the help button at the bottom right, hang on, let me move this over to my other screen. It tells you all about the cash journal reports, what the source means, the payment type, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The type here is the vendor, customer, or employee type. That's where that's coming from. The source is, again, just referring to customer, vendor, employee, or processing group. So this will give you all the information you need on a cash journal report. And a good way to find that out is actually be on that report and then click on help, because you have content specific help. The next question, really good question. Will only vendors show up if the amount paid is over the IRS threshold? The quick answer to that is no. All of them will show. And remember that filter. I'm going to get out of here and go back to Atrix. Remember that filter screen at the very beginning? Like if you want to filter out and only pull vendors that are, what is it, $600 and over, then select total amount is greater than, right? Greater than, and I'm going to make it $599.99, because greater than excludes 599 starts at 600. And then you'll only get the vendors that have a grand total of $600 or more. What I've noticed is a lot of our clients, they pull 1099s for everybody. That doesn't mean the individual recipient has to file it. They only have to file it if it's $600 and over. But some of our organizations, they want to send out all 1099s regardless of dollar amount. So it's basically up to you. But if you only want to pull the ones that are $600 or over, utilize this filter for the total amount field and put 599.99 is greater than 599.99. Good question. Okay, next question is, okay, we answered that one. That was about the cash journal report. Yeah, the one says, can you adjust the vendor dollar amount for specific vendors? Yes, you can. And let me go back to show you where that is. And by the way, I checked, I had the wrong adjustment field on that cash journal report. Let me show you real fast what I mean. Cash journal. And then I'll show you that adjustment screen on the vendor again. Under my test, I'm going to go to content. And where is that field? Here we go. 1099 adjustment amount. Use the 1099 adjustment amount, not the regular adjustments. I'm going to show you that. Let me run it. Here is that adjustment. I just had the wrong field on the report. Okay, so the system works. I just had the wrong field. Make sure you use the correct field. So I'm going to click save. Now on the vendor record, where can you enter adjustments again? When we get to the vendor record, I'm going to vendor. I'm going to go to ABC again. And under the 1099 information tab, right down here, that's where your adjustment is. And so let's say, notice how in 2005 here, I had a positive and a negative. So what if you notice that you had too much you were taking out? So remember that 1099 adjustment report where I said summary? If you change that to detail, it'll give you every single invoice that was paid to that vendor. So you can see if there was an invoice that was paid where not all of the invoice should have been 1099able, as I like to say it. So you can also enter an adjustment amount that is a negative and it'll subtract it. So you can have multiple 1099 adjustments for the same taxable year, and it can be positive and negative, and the system will add them up all together. Okay. If there are, and we're at the end of our time, if there are additional questions, feel free to reach out to support. That would be support@jmtconsulting.com, and we will be happy to help you out. Okay. Thank you all very much. And I hope you guys stay warm and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.